Wish I had one of those clappers. You know. What was that? I Love Lucy. Lindy Who or something Productions. It's closer to 4 a.m. and just seem to be turning nocturnal right now, playing chess with people from the other side of the world, exercising some international diplomacy. You know, in the most civil way possible, because that's where chess comes from, is when in the era of kingdoms, or at least this is the story, that civility was paramount. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head where it all comes from, but we have the internet, so go and find it. Go and find out the origins of chess. And it's a game of kings, you know, where disputes would happen, and instead of sending people out in smaller kingdoms or whatever, in feudal times and before that, people were known and treated as being way too valuable and indispensable. You know, humanity is not a resource. And, you know, as well as continuing themes in these videos, you know, especially these later ones in the second volume, for which it keeps me up at night. Because I have all this information and all these thoughts running around my head, trying to process at the same time through catharsis of doing these videos and trying to explain to older people the world that we live in now. Because, you know, I have chats once in a while with my mom and my dad, and we don't live in the same world they did. My father and I, we don't exactly see eye to eye all the time, because he's more leave it up to God. You know, let God sort it out. He's more of the, I don't deal with the problems of man or of the world. But I'm tired of dealing with scriptures, and I'm tired of dealing with going to church and listening to a pastor with the same sermons over and over again, with the same faces, and it seems like it's going nowhere. Right? The point of ministry and of missionary, being a missionary, not that I am one, is to go out there on a mission and do service to the Creator. You know, I try to do this with the paintings and the creative pursuits, because, you know, to give up on your passions and your talents is sacrilegious. And you know what else is sacrilegious? It's the cosmetic industry. And this gung-ho fitness thing that's all over the place. You know, obviously I come from another era. It's okay if you call me grandpa. You know, anyone else who's been on the internet longer you might as well call them great grandfather. They might as well be the AI. You know, but I remember the programming of the day, you know, starting with MS-DOS commands and its simplicity, yet its intricacy. Now, where that goes to cosmetics and fitness in this whole image thing is that, well, it becomes a window to another world. Right? Windows 3.1. And, you know, obviously it's been such a huge issue, it always was, with young women, and them having to deal with eating disorders and bullying and so on and so forth, amped up by by the internet and by these magazines, obviously with computers, or photo touching, airbrushing, Photoshop, auto tune, nightmare, mixed in with the propaganda of the medical industrial complex with pharmaceuticals. Dope yourself up with a Xanax, everything will be fine. Have a Benzedrine, it'll be fine. There's people out there on YouTube who know that all too well, how terrible that is. No explanation required. And I get very frustrated now because, yes, I give a hard time to gay people and I give a hard time to women. Because, being the soldiers and being the means by which the propaganda is communicated by making themselves into symbols or sacrificial lambs without their knowledge, or with their knowledge and their willing participation, which is even worse. The further that we get away from something that is divine, so to speak, again, one of the continual themes being when you replace religion or belief in God or something higher, of a higher power, with the state or with idols, as is the scripture and the teachings of most religions, as much as life is suffering. It doesn't have to be as much suffering as you think it is. It doesn't have to be as much suffering as it is perceived to be. I don't exactly agree with all the tenets of Buddhism. But the swastika is a symbol of God consciousness. Let's not forget about that. And being driven by this requirement and this need to educate and deal with my own issues, by the fact that I really hate where the culture has gone, and the entropy, the rate at which it is all physically and abstractly disassembled itself at such a rapid deteriorating rate, a rapid rate of deterioration, accelerationism. And there's a lot of people out there that just don't want to have any involvement with the world of man. That's, again, of course, a critique of what my father's feelings are. But they're from a different generation. And I don't blame them, But we can't run from these things. I don't want to run from these things. I don't want to end up alone and angry, for cosmetic value. To say that I did everything I could. And that's where, the bullying with the encoding, the social programming. Other people have talked about this before, the first 7 years within the school system, David Icke or whatever. And there's, that cartoon that I really appreciate, and it's that panel image of a bunch of animals next to a tree. And, so they tell, it's like, there's people out there that you try to tell, they're like elephants, you try to tell them to climb a tree and they can't. Or you try to tell a monkey and he does it so easily. Or a giraffe goes in and picks it like it was nothing. Or like trying to ask a horse. And being an individual that never really fit the mold in any regard. And there was never really much support or understanding. And the fact that they wanted to drug me up within the school system just led to more rebellion. And rebellion can make or break a person. It can make or break a society. But rebellion is required to break the propaganda. Free thinking critiques of intellectualism and of culture and of social movements. Again, I do these with just the hopes of just one person actually listening and getting past the first 4 minutes or whatever. I really don't do them for money. Because what is money? It's just a tool. It comes and goes. It's a very old mentality. If you have skills, you can trade your time for anything in the world. But the flip from the evaluation, or say the valuing of skill, to money and fame over the past, celebrity culture really started what? In the modern era with movies, movie stars, the studio system. So back to I Love Lucy, Lindy Who, or whatever, Lindy Who Productions, I think that's what it was. Correct me if you wish. It's not correct. It's just the first thing that comes to mind. That we put these people as up as false idols. And then when you see them in real life, the illusion is broken. It's all glitz and glamour. But they're real people, and they make mistakes. Very fragile lives. You imagine being an actor or someone creative. And, for what drives a lot of people who are creative, it's negative energy. You're trying to escape something. Some sort of traumatic event. Or traumatic events. That would lead one to become more independent or hardened. And what can I say? It turned from something, especially with the cosmetics, the body image issues, like the eating disorders, back in the 90s when it wasn't really talked about. It was just this thing. There wasn't many studies. It wasn't out in the public. It started getting more and more visibility because of the internet. But the internet becomes an echo chamber. You start going into these areas, these safe spaces, so-called safe spaces, in which, intruders or infiltrators work their way in there, saying that they're there to help you, not to ruin the trust of any of these areas or any of these people. But you never really know who you're talking to behind a fake name on Reddit or whatever. You never really know who they are. And that's the means of manipulation. Anonymity used to be something interesting. But when you put a face to a movement, and it's a fake one, this unachievable, narcissistic idealism. Excuse me. Everybody loses. And that's why, it's great to have body positivity. But I don't accept fat feminism or any kind of, post-second wave, grievance, intersectionality, wibbly wobbly, postmodern bullshit. Having been raised and been with women most of my life, 2 sisters, my mother, most of my life around women, that you would think I would know something more. But there's always new and interesting ways that people screw their lives up. And I've found things that have poisoned my trust. And have poisoned my love. It's very easy to get caught up in these things. But it takes a lot more effort to stay angry. I don't want to be angry. Anger poisons the well of love. And when you have body image issues and you go about these things into that downward spiral, that image, the disassociation mixed with, the propaganda of you can be whatever you want to be. You can change yourself to fit society, and then change society to fit everyone else. Or, you have to abide by my self-descriptors. All this stuff been talked about ad infinitum. So I really don't have time for this anymore. I'd rather just read another book of Paradise Lost, or read more on video of, Shake Hands with the Devil. This is important to me. And I hope it's important to you by listening to it. Obviously I'm speaking in a lower voice so that I don't wake up the person next door. Because times are now getting easier. And the social pressures to conform to this idealism of compassion, love, again, is more bullshit. It's so exhausting, this hope and this change, but things are always changing. You can sell yourself to the devil, your soul. Just to fit in. But that ain't me, man. That ain't me. And all that, just trying that painful self-awareness and anxiety, trying to fit in to somebody else's expectations. I can understand that. But that ain't me, man. An artist is not supposed to conform to other people's thoughts and desires. You're supposed to be an independent and creative thinker. It is your duty as an artist to rebel and to find new and interesting ways to provoke thought and feeling. The same as to be an engineer is to invent and to advent new and interesting ways and better ways to improve upon, but not to reinvent what is already great and wonderful. Keep it simple, stupid. And when you get too preoccupied with this veneer of narcissism, glitz and glamour, celebrity, of all that sparkles. I saw on Instagram today a shower bed And I thought and then someone else was abusing a Ferrari. It cost $400,000 now, or whatever it was, a brand new one, just for YouTube videos. And I think about the people that spent hours and hours and hours of putting that car together. And it's entirely insulting. As a creative person, I understand Enzo more than ever as I get older. You know, because he was really trying to make something interesting. He wasn't trying to make cars that were permanent. It was supposed to have some passion. It was supposed to be a vehicle that inspired a feeling and a lust for life. And when the technology gets in the way, you know, the means by which the propaganda is communicated. And this is why I put into the playlist that the documentary from TVO, Weapons of War. Because most of the fight is psychological. It always was. You know, and spiritual warfare and psychological warfare are very much the same thing. You know, blowing the horns around the walls of Jericho to bring them down. Sympathetic vibrations. I just couldn't stand to be on the sidelines anymore. And I really don't care if anybody actually watches this stuff. At least it's there for someone to find. And when you find, you ask, seek, and knock. You're no longer lost. You're in the fight with the rest of us. Information, knowledge is power. It always was. I'm very frustrated, naturally, with the behavior of women and of degenerate behavior. Hence the whole anger at degenerate behavior. Because it just destroys for a fleeting moment of ecstasy that doesn't last. Because when you get to the top of the mountain, you gotta come back down again. And when you've been up there too long, you don't remember what it is to get up there. And the fall down is swift and brutal. So what I'm really trying to say is that with these nocturnal videos for the second volume, right, the nocturne, is that I'm extremely disappointed. And I'm very, very depressed with the way things are going. Because it just feels so helpless. And here I am, still hoping that I can actually achieve something. And it just might happen. For you and for me. Good night.